everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. It's great to be back, and it's great to be recording with you again, Tim, my esteemed co-host. Good to have you back. Today, we're going to be talking about gear, which is always enjoyable, something that we always love talking about, but it's not going to be gear specifically. It's 5 things that we each cannot live without on a wedding day. And we initially struggled to find 5 things, and then we're like, do we only have to select 5 things? But for the sake of not making this episode hours long, we'll keep it to 5 things. And it's the 5 things, as the title says, that we can't live without on a wedding day, meaning they enable us to get through a wedding day. They make a wedding day easier. And to some degree, they make a wedding day possible in terms of some of the things that you have on your side. I'll let you start with your number one, and then I'll go into my number one, and we'll take turns from there. And we've got different things in front of us, so we can actually show you what we're talking about.
Show you what our 5 things actually are.
Exactly.
And we have them. Well, I don't have all my things because I don't have my bag with me. But when we were going through the 5 things, I was like, I want to talk about some things that just make sense to me to have in my bag. Yeah. And then we sort of started on this roller coaster. And then I was like, what's actually in my bag? Because now I can't think of 5. And I was like, geez, okay, now we've got to 10 and I should stop, because there's just like little things that make a huge difference to us on a wedding day. And we've spoken about the obvious gear. You need a camera, you need a lens, you need a flash for most indoors. But these things are a little different to that. It's not big gear items, but it's things that make a difference. Yeah. And my first one is, now you need a memory card to start, obviously. And my thing I learned a while ago, someone actually had it on their memory card, and I was like, that's genius. And now I've done it as well, and this is one of Tyron's cards. If you can see on YouTube, sorry podcast people, on Spotify and Apple Music, we number our cards. So I'm going to show it to the camera in front, but this one's number 15. And basically you start from 1 and go from there, and you number them as you choose. But just numbering your card it's made such a difference to organization for me. And it seems random because we talked about it at the end of last season. All the cards we were like, what number are you on? And it's like, okay, 16, 17. Okay, 23 over here. I've got this. And you're like, okay, it's chaos. But I actually remember, okay, when I'm formatting cards, or when I'm going through the wedding later, I can be like, oh, that was on card 16. And you do remember it. Yeah. Because not just like, oh, I have to shove all the cards in and check now. You're like, okay, we use dual slots. So it's generally a 64 in one and a 128 in the other. And then you switch out the 64. And then if you go further, you do it again. But you'll know, okay, I used numbers 1 and 2 on this wedding day. And that just, it's so minimal. But just, we put a little sticker on and you just put a number on. And it just makes sense, especially when you're dealing with your card case is stressing me out. I can see like 30 cards plus over there. I only have about 20, but it's so simple and it just makes sense.
Yeah. Like if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't do that, because I saw in your cards for the first time that you numbered them, and I was like, that's a really good idea. Yeah. And I've kind of evolved that in my own workflow, in that even numbers or odd numbers are in slot number 1, and even numbers are in slot number 2. Okay. So I know exactly what needs to go and where, and it's just handy. It works really, really well. And also, like, if you're going through the editing process, you may, or before you actually edit, when you're just downloading cards, you can even put a note in your CRM software or whatever you use. You know, so and so's wedding were cards number 1, 2, 3, and 4, or whatever the case is on the day. Just so that you can keep a mental note of what cards belong to what wedding, without having to actually go and check and be like, oh my word, I have to go through all, in my case, I don't even know how many cards I have. I probably have about 40 cards in that case. So yeah, you kind of keep ahead of the curve with that, and you're aware of what's going on, and you save yourself some time and effort, not needing to put your cards in and check each and every one. Yeah. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm really thankful to you that
no, you're welcome.
I found out about it, because my life would not be the same if I was still not labeling my cards. So it's a good job on that.
It's so simple, and it's one of those things that when you hear it, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And even myself, I have like numbers 1 to 10. Those are all 64s, and then 10 to 20 are all 128s, and that's just something I do. And then when you're downloading them, you keep those 4 cards aside, and you're like, okay, I can play with those now and put them on the hard drive, and then I don't have to touch them, and those 4 can stay here. And then if you go out on another shoot, you don't have those 4 with you, so you're like, oh, can I format, or am I not sure? Those 4 aren't with you because you've kept them aside because you know those numbers are not to be touched.
Yeah. A handy thing, like depending on what kind of case you've got, like what I've done, especially knowing like what cards still need to be downloaded and what cards are free, is that I actually turn them around. Like you'll probably see if you're on a YouTube channel, you'll be able to see that some of those cards are facing forward and some of them are facing to the rear. And I know that the ones facing to the rear still need to be downloaded or still need to be checked
before formatting.
Checked and or downloaded before formatting. Just so I know that I don't just a way of just avoiding formatting cards that should not be formatted. And thankfully those can all really be formatted now, because it's been a while since we've tried a wedding, which is it's been good to have a little bit of a break.
But it just makes sense for when you're shooting like 3 weddings a week, which, I mean, we've shot 4 weddings in 4 days. Yeah. And then you're just like, where am I with these cards? And then you just know. And with your case, you've got rows, and you can just say, okay, this row was day 1. This row is day 2. And it's something as simple as organizing like that. And it all helps at the end of the day. Yeah. Anyway, I feel like we could talk about cards for a long time.
We probably could, yeah. Like cards are they're such a menial little thing, but they're so important to what we do. And I mean, they're technically gear, so we could probably speak about them the whole day, but let's not. So my number 1 is a bit of a random one. It's something that I don't use all the time, but it's a little mobile Bluetooth speaker. It's focusing on my face. Focus on the speaker. There we go. They come in so many different forms. You can pick them up at most shops. Have them to some degree. Even supermarkets these days sell little speakers like that. The reason why I have it is purely to put the clients at ease, or the couple at ease, especially during engagement sessions. I find it's really useful to potentially see what kind of music they're into and put a playlist together even ahead of time. I've actually found brides and grooms on Spotify before, seen what they've saved into their their favorites or whatever, and started playing it like as soon as we start their session, and they're immediately at ease because they enjoy the music, they're comfortable, they just let their hair down, and they're a little bit more open to being in front of the camera, potentially for the first time, especially in the case of an engagement session. By the time the wedding comes around, they probably would have had an engagement session with you already, especially with the way that we do our packages. We often, it's either included or we definitely promote the idea of them doing an engagement session. But yeah, definitely my number 1 is a speaker. They're simple, they're easy, they're cheap-ish. They're cheap enough. You don't need to spend too much money on them. And it's a really good way to just put your couples at ease.
Yeah, I'll never forget a session I had, and I probably shouldn't say this. I hope they don't listen to this. But I had a session where it was pretty stiff, and I just whipped out my phone. I was like, I wish I had a speaker, but I didn't. So I just started playing off my phone. And then I think it was a Taylor Swift song or something started playing, and the dude just started jamming so hard. And he was just feeling it. And then like their photos were just so happy. And we love our couples when they're happy. And they just both of them started laughing. He was laughing at himself. She was laughing at him. And it was just so good. And the moments were just incredible. And they loved every photo from that session. Yeah. And it's just so simple. Just a little bit of music. It just put them at ease and made them relax. And it was... Yeah, it's a little hack for making the couples relax.
Exactly. And moral of the story is you don't need a speaker, but it's handy if you do have one. As long as your phone is loud enough, then it's all good.
I'd prefer to have a speaker too. Yeah,
it's good to have one. And actually, like we're going to speak about another thing later, but if you're wearing a harness or even just a strap, you can actually put that onto your strap. Just kind of connect it with a clip or whatever, and it's there. It's around It's around you. You can control it, and yeah, super handy. So we'll go on to your number 2 now, which is
my number 2. It's a bit of a strange one because it's not gear related at all. It's not camera related.
Yeah.
Well, neither's the speaker technically, but it's something I look at so often on a wedding day, because wedding days run to a timeline, and if it's late because of you feel bad. The vendors are unhappy with you, but for me, wearing my watch on the wedding day, and I always have it on me.
Yeah.
Except when I sleep, I take it off. But just instead of pulling out your phone all the time and being like, what's the time? It's just it's so easy to quickly just, if someone says, oh, what's the time? How are we running? And if you know the schedule in your head, which I like to look at the schedule before the day and know what needs to happen at what time.
Yeah.
And I can just look down at my watch and be like, okay, we have 10 minutes until you need to do this, or until I need photos of this, or until the flowers arrive, we've got 10 minutes to shoot, or okay, we can wait 10 minutes because we have the time for the flowers to arrive, something like that. And it's just something simple like, oh, what time is sunset? And you're like, okay, we're out the church now, we're doing family photos. Okay, we have half an hour until the sun goes down. Let's wrap up the family photos even quicker, or can we do the rest of them back there? And it's just knowing your times and having a watch to just say, okay. And it's a quick peek. It's nothing fancy. It's not taking out your phone and looking rude, because there's nothing worse than a photographer taking out their phone all the time just to do something, just to look at the time, in fact. So for me, my number 2 is my watch, and I can't do a wedding day without it. I think I did one, and I almost freaked out. I was just like, I'm not OCD at all, but I was just like, panic. What's the time? And then I did have to whip my phone out all the time, and I just felt so awful about it. I felt so rude doing it. But yeah, that's my number 2 is a watch.
Cool, good stuff. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like before I started putting poses and stuff on, like actually taking photos of poses and with my camera to use on wedding days and stuff, if you hit a blank, because everyone hits a blank on wedding days, where you're like, I don't know what pose to put you in next, kind of thing. I've heard a lot of people putting them onto their watches and just kind of checking that, and then potentially even having a photo of the schedule on their watch so that they can keep ahead of time like that. So
I've heard of people that with the posing thing, because I do that actually quite often. When we work together, I whip on my phone and I'll just be like, what pose can we do? The good thing about the speakers, you can just be like, oh, I'm just choosing the next song quickly, and then you like quickly choose the pose while you're like faking picking a song.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, your number
My
2.
number 2 is a snack and water. Now, depending on like how you shoot your wedding days, like I know with the way that we shoot our wedding days, we're probably on our feet 11 hours out of 12.
Yeah.
At least on a wedding day. So you're constantly moving, you're constantly burning energy. You're going to need something to replace everything that you've used. So it's always good to have some kind of snack, whether it's, an unhealthy snack, which I wouldn't necessarily advise, or a healthier one. Something that's just going to keep your sugar up, keep you energized and ready to go, because it's a long, long day, and it's going to be a while before you eat. If you even get to eat on a wedding day, which sometimes we haven't.
Don't.
So yeah, it's really, really important. And then obviously having water, it's vital to be hydrated, especially when you're busy, you're on your feet, you're running around like a crazy person on a wedding day. Just keep hydrated and keep yourself going. So that's my number 2.
I feel like you guys always laugh at me when you see my snack bag in the car. I just have this bag full of popcorn, maybe a chocolate or 2. So I'll have a Coke in there, or Red Bull, just as like some form of energy. But then water, popcorn, and some chocolates, and that's what gets me through. It's more like if you're driving from one place to the other, and you don't have time to eat, because often we get there like mid-morning, so it's like you've had breakfast, it's not quite lunchtime, but you're a little snacky, and you just to get something in until dinner. Yeah,
that's generally when I have my snack, either like between like bridal prep or groom prep or whatever and the church or the ceremony location, or between the ceremony and the reception location. 100%. It's always a really good chance to have those snacks. I don't laugh at your snack bag. It's just that you never seem to share what's in your snack bag. That's the issue.
That's fair. It's just a random packet. It's nothing fancy.
nothing inside. Nothing of interest to me. Just coming back to what you said about energy drinks. Like I don't like. That's my own personal opinion. But if you're driving quite a distance after a wedding, even before to some degree, depending on what kind of night you had the night before or whatever, but like having a coffee, even if it's like an iced coffee or whatever, just on hand so that you can keep your energy levels up. Then, especially if you're driving long distances like we've had.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I say the energy drink, and we've spoken about this before, when I was younger, I used to, every wedding, I was like, I'm going to have one. And it became a sort of like, I want to say a ritual almost, that at just before the first dance or just before, or even at dinner, actually, I would ask them for a glass with ice, and I'd pour my own energy drink in, and that would be it. And that would get me through the night. And then I was like, well, one day when I got a little older, I was like, okay, let's see how long I can go without using it. And I did a whole wedding without one. And I was like, oh, that was actually super easy. So now I have one as like a backup on those ones where we do four weddings in a row. Yeah. When you're driving to the next one, because if they're 2 hours apart, I like to try and get halfway between the two weddings. And I don't like drinking it on the drive. I'll sort of gauge how I feel earlier and maybe have it a little earlier, because if I have it on the drive for an hour, by the time I'm there, I'm not going to be able to sleep for the next day. So it's like, I think coffee is a big one as well. It's an in case. Yeah. You never feel like you need to depend on it, but it's an in case thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's my number 2. Your number 3 is up next.
My number 3 is gear. It's actual camera and lens gear.
Good stuff.
And it's common. It's a low aperture lens. We obviously shoot on them. We said in a podcast before that we both have 1.4 and 1.2 lenses, and this is one of our favorites. It's a 35mm. Well, yours is a 35 1.2. Mine's a 35 1.4. And but that's not necessary. I would say a 1.8 is fine if you can get your hands on like a 50mm 1.8. And I mean, if you're new to photography, there's tons of explanations why. And just a simple one is it blurs the background really well, and you get nice bokeh in the trees or in the background, and that just makes everything look a little dreamy. For the rest of the day, for like family portraits and stuff, you don't really need it. But for the couples portraits, or if you're taking shots of like the ring or something, you just want that little bit. It just makes it look dreamy. Yeah. And you can get them for so cheap, and it just makes it look better. I always thought, when I had an 1855, I think I said this on the last podcast, when I had an 1855, I was like, mine goes to 50mm. Why would I ever buy a different one and spend money on it? Back when I was a student and was like, I'm not spending money on this. I have a camera and a lens. And then I got a 50-1.8 with the new camera that I bought. And I was like, this is incredible. This has changed my whole game. My whole game is completely changed just because of one lens. And it's a low aperture. And it's just, when you're when you go indoors, you need that low light. Like I was shooting yesterday, actually. I had a wedding, and I had my 24-105, the f4 on, and I was like, cool, getting the shot. And then I brought out the 35-1.4, and I stopped down to about 1.6, and it just looked so much better indoors because I didn't have to bump up the ISO. It just let a whole much more light in. I could shoot at a slower rate if I needed to, a slower frame rate, and it just opens up more possibilities. And I would say anything below 2.8, if you can get your hands on one cheaply, it's value for money every time. Yeah. And that's my gear talk. That's my photo and video. That's my camera body gear. The rest are not related.
Yeah, look, it's as you say, like, obviously the nice thing about wide aperture lenses like that is the dreamy look, the bokeh and all that. But especially with where we are here in Ireland, like, if you're not shooting in summer, if you're shooting in winter or autumn or spring to some degree, you're probably going to be dealing with a lot of low light situations. Yeah. Especially when the ceremony has been late in the day and you're running out of options. It's always good to have something that can go down to 1.4, 1.2, so that you're not you're not reducing your shutter speed down to ridiculous levels where everything's going to be blurred and all that. So yeah, definitely a must-have, and our brands wouldn't be where they are without wide aperture lenses like that. So
even if you just look on our websites, you'll notice it straight away.
Most of our stuff is wide aperture, 1.2, 1.4, 1.8 at a push. But yeah. That's a really good one.
Yeah,
I'm glad you went with that. So my number 3 is a harness, and I've actually got it here. Don't want to put it on the table because it's really loud. But basically, just a harness that has 2 straps where you can run dual cameras. Obviously, the preference is to be running dual cameras on a wedding day. This particular one is from Rebel East. I can't remember what model it is, but it's really handy. I honestly I couldn't live without mine, to be fair. It's a really good one, and it's made a huge difference because I used to just use straps, and they were uncomfortable. By the end of the wedding day, you were extremely sore. Your neck felt like it didn't belong to you anymore. So
a massage
exactly. So yeah, I couldn't get through a wedding day without a harness. Even if I shoot video, I'll sometimes attach a camera that I'm not using to the harness, or even 2 cameras that I'm not using, just so that they're there and they're accessible, and it's not, because the harness is so well balanced, you don't really feel like you're carrying 2 cameras and lenses and whatever. So yeah, that's my number 3.
I think it's also finding the right one, now that you say it. I used to have one a while ago, and I didn't like it because I felt like the cameras were swinging like crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what the brand was back then. I mean, talking 5 years ago. But I bought another one last year because I was shooting so much, and I bought a strap with just a single strap, and that was fine, but my shoulder started to hurt a lot. Yeah. And I was like, okay, let me borrow one from my friend Ashley Yosip, who shoots with us. And it was so nice, and I was like, okay, well, I want that exact one, and I bought it, and now I literally can't imagine a wedding day without it.
Yeah,
I genuinely can't. It just made such a difference.
Yeah, it helps, especially when you're dealing, like if you have a really heavy setup in terms of camera and or lens. Like obviously I shoot on Sony A7 IVs, so the body itself is really light, but the 35 1.2, like if you threw that at someone, you would probably kill them. It's a heavy beast. It's a really heavy lens. So like if you were carrying that on one strap, like around your neck, it would be, it would not be pleasant. No, it would not be pleasant. So yeah, that's my number 3. I can't live without my harness on a wedding day.
Yeah.
What's
your number 4 is pretty random. But I, as I said earlier, I looked at my camera bag in my head, and I said, I opened it up in my head, and I said, what's in there? And the thing that's at the top is a lens cloth.
Yeah.
Just any old lens cloth. And the amount of times I'm clumsy, I'll admit, and I will go to grab one of the camera, because the cameras are on the harness and they're down. I don't always look, and I just grab one, and I might just smudge the lens with my finger, and I'm like, oh, so silly. So I always, because I wear a shirt, I have one in my top pocket, a lens cloth.
Yeah.
And I'll just whip that out and just quickly clean it off. And if it's raining, which in Ireland it does happen quite often, we'll get caught out, and those specks can often ruin the photo. So that's why I always have it. I just wipe it down quickly. Before the day starts, I wipe it down, the lenses, and then keep it on me at all times. And it saved me a good couple of times when I've smudged my finger on the lens, and that would just ruin everything. It just, the whole photo is soft, it can't focus properly, the camera. So that's my number 4 is lens cloth.
Yeah, and you're like a never-ending source of a lens cloth on a wedding day as well. Like I know Josip and I both come to you on a wedding day and be like, can we use your cloth, please?
I think I have 4 in my bag, and if one of those goes missing, I just replace them. I just made a big order one day, and I was like, I know I'm going to use them all over my lifetime, so
I always bring it back if I use it. So I haven't taken any.
No.
That makes a lot of sense. And as you say, like we live in Ireland, it rains a lot, And there's nothing worse than having a really soft image that you haven't planned to be soft. Like obviously soft images have their place and stuff, but if you haven't planned for it to be that way, you'd be rubbing
your t-shirt.
Yeah, literally your shirt.
Your
and
shirt or
like
your
depending
dress.
on what kind of shirt you've got,
Yeah.
if you've got like a smart, button-up shirt, it's not necessarily the softest material all the time.
It could scratch your lens and scratch the coating.
It's not worth thinking about. So lens cloth is definitely a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. So
your number 4.
My number 4 is, now I've got it here with me. Obviously, yes, that is a camera, but it's what the camera is in. Now, this potentially could be more geared towards video, and it's a cage. So the camera, as you'll see on YouTube, is in a cage. The cage allows you to mount various things, whether it be microphones or lights or monitors, whatever you use in the course of shooting video. Cages are perfect. But these cages actually very rarely come off my camera. And the reason being is that the way that this one is designed, if you were to drop your camera, now obviously bearing in mind that you'll have a lens on it more than likely, but if you were to drop your camera, there's actually going to be very few points where you can do a huge amount of damage if you were to drop it, because it is actually quite well protected.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I leave it on when I'm not shooting video, when I'm actually just shooting photo. It might not be to everyone's taste. It might be a little bit too heavy for some people. It might be just too cumbersome. But yeah, especially on video days where I'm shooting video, I would be lost without shooting with a cage, because it's just that much handier.
I think what's nice is it doesn't stop you from doing anything else on your camera. It doesn't get in the way of, if you need to change a battery, super easy. If you need to add ports into the side, easy. Add a flash to the top. It literally never gets in the way, and yet it protects your camera so well.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting piece of equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is a SmallRig one, and what I forgot to mention earlier is that we'll link a lot of these products down in the description of both the audio podcast and obviously YouTube. There's a good chance that it'll be affiliate links, so it'll be Amazon affiliate links. These, we obviously do make a little bit of money off them, but that money helps us run the channel, helps us improve the channel. So if you need to pick up any of the things that we have mentioned today, definitely use those links and support our channel in the process. And it doesn't cost you anything extra, which is amazing. So yeah, that's my number 4, a cage. So what is your number 5?
My number 5.
Final item.
My
that you
final
couldn't live
item
out on a wedding day.
Another strange one, earplugs.
Yep.
In my youth, I always thought, I'm fine. My eyes are good. My ears are fine. Oh, was I silly for not protecting them earlier? I always have earplugs in my car, in my bag, in the side pocket of my bag. And it's more for the reception, for the music part. And we're there for generally between 15 minutes and half an hour, depending on what the vibe is. If it dies down a little, we'll head out early, and then guests can be there without us pointing a flash in their face. But if it goes on longer, we generally like to stay about half an hour just to get it as much footage as possible, both photo and video wise. And it's still loud with earplugs in.
Yeah.
But as soon as you walk out of the room and you take your earplugs out, you realize how much you've protected your ears. And it makes the world of difference. If I don't have my earplugs, for some reason, I will scratch around I have earbuds in my car most of the time as well. I will run down as quickly as I can to go get earbuds. Just some sort of ear protection, and earplugs are generally the ones I have. Yeah. And they make such a difference for that reception. And it's one of those things you're like, again, I say when I was younger, I was like, oh, the music's fine, it's chilled. But now that I wear them at every wedding, I'm like, this makes the world of difference. I can actually hear my own thoughts when I get in my car and drive home. Whereas before, you just hear this ringing for minutes. It's so necessary for me.
Yeah, I think second to a lack of water on a wedding day, loud music at the reception is one of the leading causes of wet aches.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Completely.
I think you actually got me into wearing them as well. Like I've always had issues with my ears, and they've always been sensitive to noise, and just being able to put something in my ears so that if I walk past a speaker, which we often do, like oftentimes we'll shoot from the perspective of the band or the DJ, but that also puts us around the speakers.
And you're not necessarily like looking out for the speaker. You're just walking. You're like, oh, I see a shot because that's a cool circle of people. I'm going to take this shot. Yeah. And you walk right next to the speaker. Yeah. And with earplugs, it saves you. But if you're not wearing them, it's horrible. It's
downright painful if you're not. So, yeah, that I completely agree with you on that. I would be lost without earplugs or ear protection of some sort on a wedding day. Like I just use old Samsung earbuds.
That's it.
I've been tempted to use my AirPods, but I'm not that brave yet because I can see me
dropping them
on the dance floor and never seeing them again. So yeah, I will continue to use the old Samsung ones for the meantime. but yeah.
So that's my 5.
That's your 5. So I need to finish up mine.
You've got your last one, and I know this is in the boot of your card every single wedding.
I think
we always pull this out later on, if not early. It always comes out in the nighttime.
I think it's weird that it's not in the boot of my car even at the moment, even though we haven't shot weddings for a good few months now. It is the Godox AD200 Pro. So I'm geeking out a little bit, and you're probably geeking out a little bit as well because you, like me, love off-camera flash.
Yeah.
The Godox AD200 Pro is basically a flash unit that is for off-camera flash. Yeah. So a lot of what we do is off-camera flash based, especially later in the evening, kind of between the end of the meal and the beginning of the first dance. We'll get the couple outside and we'll just make use of light and get creative with light. And the Godox AD200 for us it's proven itself time and time again. There are various options. Obviously, you don't need to go for the AD200. You can do very much the same thing with any speed light that works remotely, which on most these days, most brands have some kind of way to use speed lights and lights in general remotely. So yeah, I would be lost without that. And a bonus one that I don't really it's over there, but I don't want to kind of open it up because you won't see us if I open it up. But it's the MagMod MagBox softbox, basically.
Yeah,
it's the softbox in a little bag, and you can handhold the AD200 with the softbox. And we've done a lot of off-camera flash stuff, just holding both of them together. And yeah, like if it wasn't for that, on most wedding days we would be lost, and I wouldn't be overly happy with not using off-camera flash at least once on a wedding day. So
at least once. I feel like it's again, you don't need an AD200 and a MagMod box. Those are just the ones we have, and we love them. And it's for us, it's a quick, easy setup, and we know the setup so well. So it's the same with buying a camera. Is buy the one that feels right to you. Yeah, it's not necessarily to say one's better than the other. And flash and boxes aside, we know the setup so well. We can do it in 2 minutes. We'll have it up. And I remember last year I didn't know off-camera flash at all. And by the end of the year, I was itching. I was like, can we get to nighttime? Because I want to grab this thing out the car and set it up. Let's go. And I see a spot already. And when I arrive at the venue, I'll be like, we can use that wall. We can use that. We can use the whole building. We can use the fountain. Let's do it. And I remember once you were like, calm down. We'll find a good spot. We'll go to the fountain. It looks really good there. And I'm like, okay, what about the other way as well? And you're like, oh, we'll get there. Yeah. And like, it's one of those things, we always bring it out at a certain time. And we love that session. It's also a way for the couple to have 5 minutes by themselves with us. But they're almost like, oh, I've been talking to people for 3 hours now. Let's go outside and take a breath of fresh air. And they always enjoy it. Not one couple has been like, oh, that was upsetting. And they all love the photos as well. Yeah. So learning off camera flash was great for me. And then I'm like itching to do it. And that's the gear we use for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it. That's each of our 5s. I think we've both mentioned things that are really important to us. Like as
every wedding.
As I said, we could do a lot more than 5 each, but those are kind of the main ones that we really came up with.
Yeah.
And again, they'll be linked in the description below. So if you want to pick any of these up, you will be really helping the channel by doing so, by clicking on those links. And yeah, if you have any questions about our gear, if you have any questions about things that we've mentioned, let us know. Send us a DM, comment on the YouTube channel, get in touch via Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
Anything.
And remember that we do have the Creative Collective group on Facebook as well, or community as they now call themselves. So yeah, if you are a photographer or a videographer and you're listening to this and you are looking for a community that's growing and really interested in developing, anyone who wants to develop in the group, give us a shout and head on over and join the group, and we'd love to have you there. And that's it. So until next time.
Thank you. Till next time.
It was good having you.
Have a good one.
And we'll chat soon.
We'll chat soon.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.